Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we're going to be talking more about the Bad Batch, some new information confirmed by StarWars.com as we go into the double episode this Wednesday, episode 10 and episode 11. But before we talk about those, a couple of updates for some other Star Wars projects. Lucasfilm is doubling down and preparing the multimedia initiative for the Acolyte. The action figures have been available for pre-order since last week, and now they've announced for January 2025 the official visual guide. They usually don't announce these this soon, but for the Leslie Headland series, they're ahead of the game. There's also a tie-in novel coming this October. In other quick updates, Daisy really is hoping that Finn becomes a Jedi in the new Jedi Order movie, although she says it's not her decision, it's above her pay grade, she can't make those decisions. But just like many fans who hoped in The Force Awakens Finn was going to be the Force-sensitive Jedi, Daisy is definitely on board with that theory. That's the latest from the galaxy far, far away, but now my dear friends, on to the Bad Batch, and we do have quite a lot to talk about. So no more jibber jabber, let's begin. As you guys know, the reviews are in for episodes 10 to 14 of season 3. The screeners went out, and while the vast majority of reviewers were very impressed, not everyone was, and there is a very interesting detailed review from ypareviews.com. And their bold statements, they say, episodes 9 to 14 lack creativity. I personally have been loving the third season so far, but something which now worries me that is mentioned in this review is how the season is not going to do the grandiose Clone Rebellion thing. That might be safe for a different show, but they say minus the final episode which no one has seen, that is not the direction of the next few episodes, but instead, any potential clone siege takes a backseat to, quote, a much smaller, inconsequential story. And now they question, will the entire 15th episode be another rescue mission or a prison break? And if so, in their opinion, it's a very weak way to end the series. So while the show had so much promise in its first half of season 3, they're not too convinced the final half is going to please the fandom. I think this has been one of the strongest stories Disney Star Wars has given us. But I know it's not for everyone, and this reviewer is underwhelmed, which is fine. And as we're going to talk about in just a second, in the way of expectations of an all-out battle between Imperials and clones, I always suspected that was going to be set up by this show. It doesn't have to take place in the next 6 episodes. The Bad Batch is coming to an end, but the story itself probably isn't. And it's also worth noting, they keep mentioning prison breaks and rescue missions. It sounds like Omega is going to be recaptured. And if that is going to be the final mission, so be it. Even if there's no time for the Batch to rescue other clones, if it's simply just trying to get Omega out and the consequences of that mission, which I think is going to be 1 or 2 of the Batch dying, then that's the direction of the story. And remember that Michelle Lang even said, the story changed a few times before they came to a consensus of the final version we're gonna see. And I'm sure there are many creative choices either set aside or saved for a future date. But I suppose the good news is that the vast majority of reviewers are saying it's incredible, it gets better, there's heartbreak, tension, resolve, and really a strong continuation from what we've gotten so far, which as I say I think has been brilliant. Is it going to be predictable? I hope not. So moving on but staying on the same subject, ever since the 2nd season, Echo has been off helping Rex on missions to help clones defect, but he was always still part of Clone Force 99 and even came back to help them a couple of times. But now according to the official Star Wars databank, Echo has left the group. Originally in the Clone Wars Season 7, there were just 4 members of the group, Crosshair, Hunter, Wrecker and Tech. Then Echo joined the group after being rescued on Skako Minor, before Omega then took the squad's members up to 6 in the Bad Batch Season 1. Then the squad dropped down to 5 after Tech's death, and Echo's missions with Rex left them back down to 4. In light of ever-changing circumstances, and this is going to be important for later in the video, the Star Wars databank has confirmed Echo is no longer an official member of the group. He is listed as formerly part of the 501st and formerly a member of the Bad Batch. This is of course in reference to Echo's aid of Captain Rex, although many of us assumed this did not supersede his membership as part of Clone Force 99. But now they confirm he has left. Now this is both rather sad but also kind of exciting, because in my opinion this sets up a spin-off between Rex and Echo. Their missions adjacent to this season, following the clone uprising that I think is going to happen on Tantis, and everything they get up to until the events of Star Wars Rebels and the original trilogy. Now while we're on the subject of foresight, in the same way the Bad Batch is setting up future stories that come after this season, one of the likely possibilities we spoke about the other day is Omega going off to train with Asajj. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there are 3 clues that Omega leaving her brothers was always going to be the case. The first hint is the way in which the Harbinger demonstrated that Omega's brothers in some ways are holding her back, and that she will need to let go in order to master her abilities. To mature and grow, we sometimes have to let things go, no matter how much they hurt, whether this means she's going to leave them or her brothers are going to die. And the second clue, found in Season 2, ties into this. One lesson from episode 9 of the 2nd season, The Crossing, parallels the 9th episode of the 3rd season. This concerns something which Tech taught Omega before his death, and it plays into a concept confirmed by the showrunners that even from beyond the grave, Tech's impact and his legacy are being felt. When Omega was depressing over Echo's departure, she wonders why Tech doesn't feel more sad, and during that emotional response, when he talks about the way he feels emotions and how they're not any less, even if he expresses them differently, he informs Omega about the importance of accepting change. How Echo, and back then Crosshair, chose their own paths, and he's learned to accept it, because change is an inevitable part of life. This is something I'm sure Omega contended with when Tech himself died, but somehow I feel like that's going to be relevant again before the end of this season. This is something I feel like Omega is going to parrot back to her brothers if they survive Season 3. Otherwise, once again, she's gonna have to take on that lesson herself, learning to move on. But if they do live, and she chooses to go off with Asajj, I reckon she's gonna tell them whatever path she chooses is one they're gonna have to learn to accept. And at this stage, they're not ready to do that. Hunter told Asajj, Omega leaving them is not an option. It might have to be. And this will mean that one of Tech's final lessons to his sister is gonna come full circle, as have so many other lessons, like when Omega and Crosshair escaped Tantis, and she told Crosshair that she memorized all of Tech's plans. It's one of the reasons it's important he doesn't come back to life. He fulfilled his purpose, that's still being kept alive by the likes of Omega and her brothers, and from a certain point of view, the weight of Tech's death was an important part of Crosshair coming to the light, part of his redemption, and the stars of the Bad Batch have spoken about Tech's death and how it might come into play in the final few episodes of the 3rd season. D. Bradley Baker said this, "The loss of Tech is a profound one. I think it ups the stakes for what's at play and what's to come. It's very real stakes. This is something that is finite. And I think for Omega where you have to, as a team, compensate and step in to fill any kind of void or vacuum. And so I think Omega taking those lessons from Tech are going to be very important if and when she does join Asajj, and sets aside, or should I say, leaves behind, the days of working alongside her brothers." The third and final clue is less thematic, and more of just a visual reference that I think has been there since Season 1. In the first 2 seasons, Omega was wielding an energy bow with a glowing purple bowstring, and she found it during a mission on Ord Mantell. Omega's energy bow was of course of Zygerian origin, and not Dathomirian. That being said, the visual reference was certainly something reminiscent of the latter. Fans have been wondering ever since, is there going to be a Night Sister connection to Omega? And it seems like the answer is finally going to be yes. Not in the sense that she is a Night Sister, she's not, she's a clone, but more to do with her connection to Asajj, and she might become her apprentice. In Star Wars The Clone Wars, the witches of Dathomir wielded similar bows. They're not exactly the same as the one Omega used to use, but they were ones the Night Sisters used to kill those who Mother Talzin identified as a threat. Was this something planned all along? To have connections between Omega and the former assassin Night Sister, Asajj? And it's interesting in light of Omega's potential Force abilities. She now uses an energy crossbow, a more compact version of her weapon of choice. But with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below, all of the theories, speculation, and reveals. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.